of what is most expensive to become and be in Georgia. We may think a lawyer, we may think a doctor, or even a legislator with the sacrifices that each of us make. You're wrong. The most expensive thing you can be in Georgia is poor.
Representative Inga Willis argues against a measure to expand the number of criminal offenses that would require a cash bond. Good evening and welcome to Lawmakers on this sixth day of the Georgia legislative session. I'm Donna Lowry in Atlanta. More on what happened under the Gold Dome in just a moment. Last summer, 40 Georgia hospital emergency room pediatric physicians wrote an open letter to lawmakers asking for help addressing the rise in children coming into the emergency room with gunshot wounds. On the show today, a doctor who is a lawmaker with legislation aimed at keeping more children from getting shot. Also, what is the Senate's Special Committee on Investigations and what are they doing? Two lawmakers on that panel are with us in the studio to give us some insight. We'll also learn more about the move to make voters have a decision on sports betting and look at efforts to improve early literacy for children. But first, let's get right down to the Capitol, where our Sarah Callis filed this report.
Hi, Donna. Today, lawmakers debated several controversial bills about the criminal justice system in Georgia. The debate about the Prosecuting Attorney's Qualifications Commission made its way to the Senate floor again. Last year, the Senate passed SB 92, which would create a commission that would oversee and potentially punish local district attorneys who fail to uphold Georgia law or break it. That bill required the Georgia Supreme Court to set up the rules and guidelines for the oversight. But the court rejected that idea, saying it didn't have the authority to perform those duties. So the bill was back in the Senate without that requirement. This time is SB 332.
So all this legislation does, this little cleanup bill, is on line 14. It takes out, provided, however, that such standards and rules shall be effective only upon the review and adoption of the Supreme Court, and allows the Prosecuting Attorney's Qualification Commission to work along with PAC and make those rules.
Those that oppose the creation of the commission say that it is still just a way to punish the DAs whose policies don't align with Republicans.
That bill from last year, as well as this one that's trying to clean it up, are lawmakers, Republican lawmakers really, who are trying to target prosecutors who have been democratically elected to serve their particular communities, not Republican legislators in this building, and who, apparently are dissatisfied with some of the decisions that they have made.
Like last year's bill, this one passed along party lines, 29-22. And the Senate also took up SB 344. It would create a 5-day tax exemption each year on the sale of firearms, ammunition, gun safes, and related items.
The Second Amendment sales tax holiday is intended to encourage hunting, conservation, and tourism in the state of Georgia.
Democrats objected to the bill, saying that it will just increase the number of guns.
This bill explicitly values selling guns, ammunition, and gun safety equipment for 5 days once a year. But meanwhile, we need gun safety year-round.
Others pointed out the hypocrisy, citing that tax exemptions on other items would benefit far more Georgians.
We're talking about exemptions that could ease the crushing financial burden of raising children. Think about it, essentials like baby formula and diapers. And let's not forget the bill to eliminate the discriminatory sales tax on menstrual products for women and girls, pads and tampons, a monthly medical necessity. Today is a stark testament to where our priorities lie when we can't muster the political will to ease the struggles of everyday Georgians, but can leap into action for a sales tax holiday on guns.
The bill was passed 30-22. Another bill, SB 189, was also debated on the floor. It would eliminate the QR code on ballots and print voters' choices instead.
The voter, the elector, can actually read who they voted for and how they voted. No QR codes, no barcodes, no marks that are non-human readable. Okay? It does a couple of things. It helps people have confidence that their vote was accurately recorded. It also ensures that when you look at your ballot, you can see how it was marked.
Despite Democrat objections, including the cost to implement a new ballot reading system, The bill was passed 31-22. In the House, lawmakers approved a bill that expands the number of crimes that require a cash bond, including more misdemeanors. Senate Bill 63 also limits how many times you can bail someone out of jail to 3 per year. Opponents say the bill is taking aim at low-income Georgians.
They will be crushed by this state's criminal system. SB 63 continues this crushing. SB 63 picks on the poor. Please vote no. Thank you.
It also affected churches and other nonprofits that sometimes pay bail for members.
I invite you to go to Section 4, line number 192. No more than 3 cash bonds may be posted per year by any individual, corporation, organization, charity, nonprofit corporation, or group in any jurisdiction. That sounds like to me that we can possibly criminalize churches who will raise money to get their member out of jail.
Supporters say the measure reaffirms Georgia's commitment to law.
Ultimately, this legislation is about addressing repeat offenders, and it's about respecting our law enforcement officers. We've heard from countless officers that go out every day and do their job, arrest criminals, and then as soon as they get to jail, they're checking right back out.
The bill passed 97-69 and now advances to the governor's desk. Also today, cancer survivors and oncologists from across the state advocated for expanded Medicaid. They said a coverage gap often delays diagnosis and reduces early treatment.
We know that Georgians who can afford cancer screening, cancer treatment, and post-cancer follow-up live longer than those who can't afford care. Georgians fighting cancer should never have to choose between life-saving medical care and paying their rent. I am heartened to hear that Georgia lawmakers are discussing ways to close the healthcare coverage gap.
Tomorrow, lawmakers will come back to the Gold Dome for Day 16, where they will hear the Georgia Supreme Court justices deliver their State of the Judiciary address. That's all for my Capitol Report. Donna, back to you.
Thank you, Sarah, for that report. The Georgia General Assembly took time off yesterday to say goodbye to a friend and colleague.
State leaders, as well as a large contingent of state legislators, joined family and friends at a service Monday to honor the late state representative and House Rules Chairman Richard Smith. Smith passed away last week due to complications with the flu. The service was held at the First Baptist Church in Columbus, where Smith and his family attended. Every person who spoke about Smith, who had served in the state house the last 20 years and as a Columbus councilman before that, used the same term about the 78-year-old Republican.
My family has never used this moniker very often. And that's saying someone was a good man. I cannot say it enough about Richard Smith. He was a good man. A man of the people, a man who cared about everyone that came before him, everyone he met. And I think his life and legacy is evident by the turnout here today.
For those of you that don't know me, I'm Brian Kemp. Richard Smith was my friend.
Governor Kemp, who shared a 20-year friendship with Smith, joked that there may have been one person who the veteran politician liked even better than himself.
There's one thing that Richard liked more than me, and that was Marty Kemp. He happily told anyone who was near that any one of Marty's bills that came before his Rules Committee would quickly be passed and sent to the full chamber for consideration. He did not do that with my legislation, by the way.
Those who spoke at the pulpit all agreed that Richard Smith was a straight shooter who, quote, told it like it was. And universally, all said that when Smith called you a friend, he was a friend for life. Lieutenant Governor Burt Jones shared the story of one of their first meetings when Jones, a brand new legislator, went to Smith for advice on a bill he was trying to get passed.
I just remember that 10-minute, what was supposed to be a 10-minute meeting turned into an hour-plus conversation. And when we finally got done, I was walking out the door and I said, oh, by the way, what about what we originally talked about being here for, that bill that I had? He simply said, don't worry about it. I got it taken care of. I just wanted to size you up real quick, you know. And ever since then, he's somebody that I could always count on for for advice, for guidance, but always count on somebody who was going to be loyal, fiercely loyal to his friends, his family.
Richard Herbert Smith was laid to rest at Park Hill Cemetery in Columbus.
Chairman Richard Smith certainly left a mark on Georgia during his 20 years serving the state. Lawmakers under the Gold Dome are leaving indelible legacies every session. They all seek office, looking to pass transformative legislation. Joining us now is a lawmaker looking to do just that with the bills she sponsors. Democratic Representative Michelle Owl of Johns Creek is also a physician. Welcome to Lawmakers. Once again, we love having you on. Let me start with this. Last summer, 40 Georgia hospital room, emergency room pediatric physicians wrote an open letter to lawmakers describing their alarm over the number of children they see with gunshot wounds. Let's start with a couple of bills involving guns that you're very passionate about, and one deals with safe storage. Talk about that.
Thanks, Donna. I think that letter from the pediatricians really shows how important of an issue this is, not just to the medical community, but to families at large in Georgia. And this type of legislation that we are advancing and the issue that the pediatricians are taking up is in response to this latest set of CDC data from 2020 that shows that gun violence is the #1 cause of death in children and teens in this country, right? So that's a shocking statistic, but it's also one that forces us to act, right? And especially as lawmakers, it is our responsibility here to protect our children. So what do we decide to do with this responsibility and this power?
So you have HB 161, the Pediatric Health Safe Storage Act.
Correct. And this is a bill that we dropped last session. It was heard in the House Public Safety Subcommittee, which in itself was historic because I'm told by some of our colleagues that it's the first substantive piece of gun safety legislation that's been heard in at least 6 years. And I think that's really a testament to the work of our community members who prioritize these issues and told Republican leadership who chair all these committees that this is an issue that we need to act on, right? So this is a bill that we're going to continue to champion as we move through this session. And our goal, I think, is quite modest, that we would like this bill, the Pediatric Health Safe Storage Act, to be reassigned to the Public Health Committee where I think it can be fairly heard and voted out.
Okay, there is a partner bill too, HB 855. Talk about that.
So HB 855 is a bill I pre-filed during our special session, and it is a companion piece to HB 161, and what it seeks to do is to offer an up to $300 tax credit for purchase of safe storage equipment, right? So it has that same focus. It does prioritize safe storage, but what it does is it incentivizes responsible gun ownership behavior. It does not punish anything. It does not ban anything. It merely offers a financial incentive for people who are looking to purchase, for example, a gun safe or a trigger lock.
Okay. I want to ask about something else that the Senate dealt with, and that was a bill that nearly every Republican senator is sponsoring. Senate Bill 344 would make gun safes, accessories, ammunition, all tax-free for a few days. And the bill passed today in the Senate. Here's what Senator Jason Anavatarte told our Sarah Callis after the vote.
Basically, what this bill is doing is promoting outdoorsmanship, sportsmanship, conservation. I think it's just allowing those that are doing it in rural communities and even around Metro Atlanta to have a sales tax break on those items that they're going and buying at the beginning of hunting season, which is in October when deer season starts.
Okay, your thoughts?
Well, after we pre-filed HB 855, that bill, the tax credit bill for safe storage equipment, actually got endorsed by Georgia 2A, which is a pretty active pro-gun group here in Georgia. After that point, we actually had quite a lot of attention on that bill because I think it gave our Republican colleagues some cover for working on something that I think a lot of us acknowledge needs to be a priority, right? So when I see a bill like this, and I see a number of bills that sort of are variants on this issue, I'm very gratified that Republicans are coming to the agreement that this needs to be a priority, that protecting children from the scourge of gun violence is a priority. I think that with the various bills, there's different content and different effect. A gun bill like SB 344 that was passed today that allows more guns to be purchased without the purchase of safe storage equipment, I think maybe misses the mark when it comes to the goal of safe storage legislation, which is to increase the purchase of safe storage legislation so that more guns do not mean more gun violence. But I certainly appreciate the fact that we can agree that safe storage needs to be a priority. It's just how we go about having that effect.
Do you think your bill, you feel pretty good about your two bills at this point, that you did have the subcommittee look at it last year? Where do you think?
Well, I am continuing to be hopeful that we can get that bill reassigned to public health. I think that is the appropriate committee for it to be heard because it was based on CDC data. In terms of the tax credit bill, because there are so many variants on this bill, I would be happy to support many of them, including a variant that is HB 971 that we heard on the House side today that is very similar to our bill, and to get it across the finish line, really. It doesn't have to be a bill with our name on it. It just has to have the intent and the goals that we look to champion. So, so we'll see.
We'll continue to follow them. Thank you so much for coming on the show.
Thank you so much.
Coming up, these lawmakers here are talking about education and sports betting. That discussion ahead, so stay with us.
Lawmakers is made possible by Georgia Farm Bureau. With over 80 years of helping everyone understand the importance of agriculture in our state. After all, ag is Georgia's #1 industry. Food and fiber production represents over $74 billion in output of Georgia's strong economy. The Georgia Farm Bureau legislative team works to represent producers across Georgia at the state capitol during the session and year-round. Georgia Farm Bureau, the voice of Georgia farmers.
People put their faith in PBS because they know that it is constantly delivering quality. It covers the whole of the United States. It's a free and independent media.
We go where the viewers are.
What are the conversations that are happening right now?
We feel that civil discourse is a civic responsibility.
What we do is authentic reporting that people can trust.
We give time so you can hear voices on all sides of an issue.
This is the place that people turn to for stories that matter.
And they know that when they walk away, they will have learned something about the world around them.
That's why this makes PBS important for daily life and, in the end, our world.
Thank you for joining us.
Community. Learning, working, playing, celebrating, doing life is always better together. At GPB, we aim to provide you with the tools to be able to do life together well. Our mission to educate, inform, and entertain inspires everything from our wide range of programming to our stimulating radio conversations to our fun in-person events. We've got something for everyone. Visit gpb.org/community to learn more about our upcoming events.
Welcome back to Lawmakers. I'm Donna Lowry. We're going to talk about education, sports betting, and more. Joining us are Republican Senator Bill Calzert of Athens. He's chairman of the Senate Committee on Regulated Industries and Utilities, and Democratic Senator Jason Estevez of Atlanta. His Senate committees include Children and Families, State and Local Government Operations. Both of them do a lot. Welcome to Lawmakers. I appreciate you being here. So, Chairman Calzert, I got to start with this. So, last week, the Georgia Senate passed a measure to allow sports betting under the purview of the Georgia Lottery, and you added a constitutional amendment. So, talk about that.
Well, this issue has been before us for several years now, and I have always contended that it requires a constitutional amendment. The people of Georgia, when they approved the lottery back in 91 or 92, were promised there would be no further expansion of gambling without a constitutional amendment. In fact, the lottery amendment included language that expressly prohibited other forms of gambling. Sports betting at the time was illegal nationwide by federal law, so there's no way anybody reasonably would have believed that the lottery could have hosted sports betting as a lottery game. So I just feel like this is something that we ought to let the people have a say in. If we're going to make this big of a policy change, then we need to obey our Constitution and amend it appropriately with a 2/3 vote of the legislature and then a majority vote of the people. So I insisted that that be included in the bill. And we passed one a couple of years ago, the constitutional amendment. I know it can be done, and it's the fair way to treat the people of Georgia.
Yeah, it was a surprise to some people that you added that. It's going to go over to the House, so it's going to, you voted how on that particular bill?
I voted to support sports
Talk about
betting.
that.
Well, Donna, sports betting is one of those things that is happening across this country, whether it's regulated or legal in Georgia or not. And for me, it's important for Georgia to join the 39 other states that have regulated this industry and that are getting revenues for it. And we have many needs here in this state, especially around education. I know we'll talk a little bit about that later. But those needs have to be funded, and this is a great way to fund some of the gaps that we see in education.
And going for amendment is a good idea as far as you're concerned.
Yeah, for me, it's whether it's a constitutional amendment or not, I think it's important for us to regulate this industry, bring it to light, and to get the right revenue from it.
Okay, so let's talk about one of your education bills. You served on the Atlanta Public School Board and been involved in education for a while. Among the education bills, SR 144, a bipartisan bill, and that it would create the Senate Expanding Early Childhood Education Study Committee. It's a long name. Tell us about it.
Yeah, so what we have learned about education is not surprising, is that the earlier you start, the more effective, the more efficient you are with not only educating children, but spending your money. I was hearing a presentation from the state economist that talked about how expensive education is in the state, and he was wondering how to make it less expensive. And my immediate thought was, well, you start sooner, because our current system is set up to constantly try to play catch up, to remediate students. By third grade, close to 60% of our children are not reading on grade level. What we know is that the earlier you start, starting in pre-K, starting with 3-year-olds, starting at birth with literacy, can have all of our third graders reading by on grade level. And that's why, for me, it's important for us to study how we can expand opportunities, not only to fully fund pre-K, but expand it for 3-year-olds and potentially include those who are newborns, 1 or 2-year-olds.
They say they can read early.
They can.
Yeah, Chairman Calzert, I know for your caucus, literacy is a big goal. So this is this falls under that, doesn't it?
Yeah, it does, and I think it's one of many attempts we're doing to try to improve education in the state. It's one thing about the sports betting is that the proceeds are to go to Hope Scholarships and pre-K programs. One of the other proceeds of that or uses of that money is to prevent problem gaming and try to treat and cure that. If we do create some folks with addictions to gambling, we need to set aside the resources to take care of it. And a constitutional amendment is the only method you can dedicate funding like that. Yeah. And that's where we want to go, to the kids, and guard against any problems we might create.
That's already in the bill, though, to something for gamblers to help
No,
them.
not dedicated funding. That's one of the advantages of my amendment that allows the constitutional amendment to do that. Okay. And I honor the desires of everybody else to bolster the Hope and pre-K programs with the remainder of any revenues that come out from that.
Okay. I want to get into another area that you're both on a committee. It's the Special Committee on Investigations. So tell me what that's all about, or tell the audience.
We'll be glad to. So everybody's heard about some of the Fonnie Willis issues that have been widely publicized here lately, and whether possible improper relationships, misuse of federal funds, misuse of state funds. There's just a lot of very troubling allegations. And our mission is to investigate that and find out what the true facts are. And I've talked with Senator Estevez. We're going in with no preconceived beliefs. We're going to investigate, look for the truth, and see where it leads us. But I think everybody is noticing now a lack of confidence in our justice system, fear that it's not impartial, it's not fair to all involved, and that is undermining our society. So we're going to look and see, are there problems and are there changes that we can make in the law to restore public confidence? Maybe we look at the Special Assistant prosecutor process. Maybe we'll look at the funding process. What type of conflicts of interest should or should not be permitted? We are not targeting Fani Willis. We're not going to try to remove her from office. We're not trying to prosecute her. We're not trying to interfere with her prosecutions that are ongoing. That is not the role of the state Senate. It's to investigate these very troubling allegations, see if there's any truth to them, and what we can do to solve them.
And what kind of powers does the committee have? Subpoena powers, right?
Yes, we're going to have the power to subpoena witnesses, to subpoena documents and information, to compel people to come testify. We'll be having an organizational meeting this week to get our rules together for the committee, and it's bipartisan. Senator Estevez is on the committee, and the House Whip, Harold Jones, who used to be a prosecutor in Augusta, and the minority leader, Ms. Butler, is on there. So we're going to have buy-in from both parties, and I've assured everybody it's going to be fair. We're going to be open, we're going to be transparent, and this is not any kind of preconceived witch hunt.
Yeah. Senator Estevez, your thoughts?
Yeah, well, I initially voted against the resolution. I thought there were more important things that we should be focusing our time on. But I also think it's important for Democrats to be a part of this committee, not only to make sure that it's fair, but to make sure that we're doing our job. And I was heartened by who was appointed. I have confidence in Chairman Cowsert and many of the other folks who were appointed by the Lieutenant Governor. And I will do my part to make sure that it's a fair process, and that, especially as a Fulton County taxpayer, that we see this thing through.
You spoke against it on the floor, I believe.
Absolutely.
Right, and then ended up on the committee. Okay.
Bingo.
Right.
It's funny how those things work.
Well, we'll continue to keep up with what's going on with that. I do want to ask, since we have the state of the judiciary tomorrow, any thoughts on where do you think we are? What do you think the Chief Justice Boggs will talk about, or
I don't know. I will tell you, I do a lot of trial work, mostly on the civil side, and I was picking a jury this summer up in Hall County, and I asked the question, is there any reason any of you would not feel comfortable on this jury? One guy just went off. He said, I want nothing to do with our judicial system. I have lost total faith and confidence in it. It's a rigged system. He just went on and on and on. And obviously he didn't get picked on this jury, but we have to restore the confidence in our public in our judicial system. And I'm not sure what Justice Boggs will say tomorrow. He's a wonderful person and a good friend of mine, but I'm interested to hear if the courts are hearing that all around the state, or was that just my experience?
Are there any solutions that you see for the problem legislative?
I'm not sure. We look forward to hearing what Justice Boggs has to say, if he has any, any ideas or suggestions for us. And hopefully our investigative committee will also be looking at what are the legal parameters and structures on the system, particularly criminal, prosecutions, and we'll be looking for legislative solutions if we can find them.
Yeah. I want to give you a little chance to talk about that, Senator Estevez.
Yeah, I think our institutions are under attack by conspiracy theories and by those who are calling into question institutions and values that we've held near and dear as a country for hundreds of years. And I think it's on us to make sure that while we want to hold each other and these institutions accountable, that we not set off a sense of hysteria where all of a sudden everything feeds into a conspiracy theory. And my concern is that some of the legislation that we've taken up here in the Senate and in the legislature generally, in the House too, are feeding into those conspiracy theories.
Okay. Well, we'll wait to hear what happens tomorrow, what he has to say. But I want to thank you both for coming on, and we'll see what happens with the bills and your committee. That does it for Lawmakers Tonight. As we mentioned, tomorrow's Georgia's Chief Justice Michael P. Boggs will give the State of the Judiciary address to a joint session of the General Assembly. We'll let you know what he said and have lawmakers on the show with reactions. Good night.